Hey, welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody being here to this webinar event. Really looking forward to the discussion. My name's Jason Johnson, and thrilled to be joined by my colleague Christian Moore. I'll introduce myself and then say hello to Christian here in a minute. Christian will go into a little more detail on some of his background, but I am the director of training for the YTRI organization. Been with the organization for just about a decade, about 10 years, and really feel fortunate to be a part of this work. My background is I'm a school psychologist, came to YTRI before or after working in public ed, and I used these YTRI resources in this model as a school psych, and now I feel fortunate to be able to go out and sit at the table and discuss resilience, skills of resilience, student challenges at a broad national level, and just feel very grateful. I'm joined by Christian. Christian Moore is the founder of the YTRI organization. Christian, welcome. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great today.
It's always fun. Summer's a wild time for us because we do so many events during the summer to try to provide resources for people throughout the country. And so it's fun to be able to sneak these virtual events and stay connected and share with our colleagues and new friends as well. Quick request. Thank you all for showing up, those that are here live. A quick request from you. So the plan is we're going to go for about an hour, and we do have a live chat, as many of you have noticed. So one thing that you can do that would be helpful is if you'll take a look at the chat tool, and right above where you would type a message, above where you type, it says to, and then there's a little drop down menu. If you'll make sure that says to everyone, it'll make it so that other people can see your comments, and the chat space can be a nice space to exchange ideas. And then if you have questions, we can try to respond to questions as well. So we're on a webinar link, which means Christian and I are the only ones with a live camera and a live microphone. So the chat becomes a great way for us to try to stay connected with and engage with you. But go ahead and make that adjustment. And then after you've made that adjustment, just type into the chat. What I want you to type is type an emoji that expresses how your summer has gone so far. So just share in the chat an emoji that expresses how your summer has gone so far. Some of you are going, how do you make the emoji? If you click on that smiley face, it'll let you pick. There you go.
There we go.
Oh, that's good. This is good. This means people are having good summers. Some of you are having some crazy summers. All on the table. We've had a little bit of everything. Mostly it's been a good crazy, but that's good. I love to see you all. This is a good time for all of us to be charging up our batteries. Well, with that, let's get into it. We're going to talk today about some really important stuff. We're going to talk about some strategies specifically for addressing student engagement. We're going to talk about strategies for trying to help students to show up, and everything in between. And to kick it off, I'm going to throw to you, Christian, our resident expert, Christian Moore, LCSW, founder of the YTRI program, and let you tell a little bit more about your background and get this conversation started.
All right, perfect. We hit that slide there, Jace. And then first of all, while Jason's doing that, let me take just a little second and introduce him a little bit more. Jason, again, he mentioned he's our director of training. He's really our resident YTRI expert. He's really where the rubber hits the road in communities across this country. Jason has traveled millions of miles impacting schools across the country. He's literally impacted well over 1 million children. He'll never tell you that, but he's the real deal. So if anybody has any questions, when I'm talking particularly, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to put in the chat. Jason is really good at answering questions, so take advantage of that. or if you get tired of hearing me talk, you can just, ask Jason questions. So feel free to do that. Again, I'm Christian Moore. I'm the author of the book, The Resilience Breakthrough. Greenleaf, my publisher, just shared with me we have over 120,000 copies now of the book in print. I never dreamed in a million years it would do that. And so I'm very excited about that. Today we're going to be sharing a little bit about resilience, about why try. People always ask me, where did you get connected to resilience? Why did you get so passionate from resilience? It's this next slide right here. It comes out of growing up between Baltimore and DC. That's why I'm an Oriole fan. And that's me and my Washington Commanders Sears catalog coat right there. If anybody remembers those coats, you had the little hoodie on the back and it had the name of my team growing up. And so there was a few social problems in my community. Both my parents had some pretty intense mental health struggles. My dad was autistic, was a code breaker at NSA, but was brilliant, one of the top mathematicians in the world, literally, and graduated from high school early, and the government hired him to be a spy. So I was literally raised by a spy. And then my mom had a fear of leaving the house and some pretty intense social anxiety. I myself was a special education student. I was illiterate when I was 17 years old, and basically I got the opportunity to speak because I was one of the first people at the university I went to. I was one of the first people with severe learning disabilities to graduate from my university, and that opened up some doors for me to be able to speak about that. And the neighborhood I grew up in, I literally thought I would never get out of my neighborhood. It was funny, my 18-year-old son saw me talking about this the other day, and he's like, "You never thought you would leave your neighborhood?" And I go, "No, because none of my friends had cars." And, I've gone 7 million miles flying on airplanes, but literally thought I would never get out of my neighborhood. And now I'm like in a 1 percentile to ever travel that much across the planet. And so life's been a crazy journey. So, people always ask me, what's the number one thing a person has to have to be resilient? I always say you have to have something to bounce back from. You have to have some type of suffering. So here's my journey of resilience here. I'm going to play this quick little video clip.
You want me to play the video now?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and just hit that video clip there. I did my thesis, my graduate thesis, believe it or not, on resilience. And then this is the Kauai longitudinal resilience study. I wanted to know, two kids grew up in the same home, the same background. One kid makes it out, the other kid doesn't make it. What's the X factor? And we found there was resilience. So here's my story of resilience and why I became interested in it.
I grew up in between Baltimore and DC. In a family of 12 kids, 5 brothers, 6 sisters. Both my parents had some mental health challenges. My mom had social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, had a fear of leaving the house. You have to leave the house to go get food. So it was a lot of food to eat sometimes in my house growing up.
Don't tell anyone, but my dad was one of the highest level code breakers at the National Security Agency. You could give my dad any mathematical problem and he could instantly rattle off the top of his head. My dad was autistic. He was a genius, but he had very little common sense or social skills. If you've ever seen that movie, A Beautiful Mind, you've met my dad.
So having 2 parents with some mental health challenges put me in a situation where I ended up being a street kid. I could hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a school night, had very few rules, very few boundaries. One night, I was out late at night and a car pulls up and I hear a voice. And the voice I hear is the voice of a woman who I endearingly call Mama Jackson. It was one of my best friend's moms who sees me out there, late at night.
Christian had so many obstacles that was going on in his home.
She knows what I'm out there doing. And she says, "Look, don't you ever set foot on our property. I'm going to call the school tomorrow. I'm going to make sure you're not in any of Sean's classes." I remember thinking to myself, dang, I know I'm bad, but I'm not that bad. I can never go to school with him ever again.
When you see a child that's hungry, there's no happiness there. You're thinking about what other kids have that they don't have, okay? But when you see a child that's hungry and you give that child some food, you see that child's disposition change.
Yeah.
Going to school was very difficult for me. As a child, I was diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, and severe learning disabilities. When I was sitting in a classroom, oftentimes, I was embarrassed. When I got called out loud, I would act up and get in trouble instead of embarrassing myself because I didn't know how to read or didn't know how to do basic math. So, for me, it was like going to the doctor's office every day, going to school. I had a hard time telling time when I was even 17 years old. I couldn't tell time on a hand clock. To me, a quarter to 5 equals 25 minutes to 5. But they tell me a quarter's 15. But how could a quarter not equal 25?
When we concentrate on that more, to make sure that a child's needs are provided for, then that child will thrive. I know that I'm loved, and I know that this person is going to feed me to make sure I have what I need. One of his teachers in high school said to him that he would never go to college. Christian went to college.
Growing up in between DC and Baltimore, I saw many social problems in my community, in my neighborhood. I saw poverty. I saw hopelessness at times. I even saw some violence. But I remember walking to school one morning and literally seeing one of my best friends evicted from his house. His furniture was all throughout his front yard. I could see the heartbreak in his eyes, his parents' eyes. And I knew in that moment, I wanted to be a social worker. And I knew I could not become a social worker unless I went to college. But I was told college was probably not going to be an option for me with a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading and writing level. Statistically, I had a better chance of playing the NBA and becoming LeBron James.
His experience was at the other side of the track. Life was different. Life was unique. And the kids like that, they have to survive.
I struggled getting through college math. College math is a requirement to make it through school. I remember that feeling in my stomach when I knew I couldn't graduate.
They're not going to let me graduate because I can't do math. I can't count money. I can't numbers. I get confused and all of these things. He was like a bobcat in a cage.
So I came up with something called the No F game plan. And this was a strategy that I used to make it through school with my learning differences.
He made himself big. He made himself known to others. I'm here. Hey, I may not have what you have, but I have street smart.
I would go to every class. I would sit on the front row. I would do all the homework assignments. And I would do enough extra credit to get a D-. I would shoot for A's, but I learned in college you get just as much credit with a D-.
And his paper is not polished. Other students get an A. Christian gets B, sometimes a C. But he has ideas. He has a substance. And the Why Try program that he ran with and helped incredible number of students and the teachers and administrators came out of a classwork.
He created an environment to teach teachers how to really deal with students that may have significant functional limitations.
The vision of Why Try, and I think this thing is called the roller coaster ride. And I'm so glad that when he fell off of that roller coaster, that he got back on.
Dr. Virgil Wood, civil rights icon and close friend to Dr. Martin Luther King, learned about Why Try's impact and decided to honor Mama Jackson with the National Rosa Parks Save the Children Award. Mama Jackson gave me a safe and loving environment so I could thrive. She didn't get rid of my problems at home, at school, in my neighborhood. She showed me how to use those problems as a fuel source to put one foot in front of another and create a productive outcome.
And I was very blessed to have her come into my life. The kid that played me in the video, we're filming out west here, and he hadn't met too many African-American women after like 2 days of film, and he got really emotional. And I'm like, have you ever been around an African-American woman before? And he was like in tears. He goes, she's the most amazing person I've ever been around. And so he literally, even though it was just a video, it kind of replicated my life story, him just connecting with the lady playing Mama Jackson and stuff a couple days there on that film set. It was kind of a cool experience to see. So again, you know, a lot of the opportunities I've had in life, and you know, we've reached now over 3 million students. You know, Mama Jackson played a huge role in that. When I first started working with students, a school psychologist one day showed me that 80% of these kids I'm working with are visual learners. So I started taking everything in mental health and kind of making it visual for students. If I was talking to them about their decisions having consequences, you know, I would draw this picture of this roller coaster that just kind of showed the ups and downs of life here. I mean, pull up this next slide here. There we go, that reality right there. So yeah, so one of the first pictures I drew was a picture of that roller coaster right there that, again, just showed the ups and downs of life. And then to get on that track to opportunity, freedom, self-respect, that second track, we want them to know how to tear off their labels. You know, growing up, I had many of these labels right here: failure, druggie, learning disabled, dumb, lazy, rebellious, attitude problem. So, you know, I want a partnership with them and helping them tear off those labels right there. With this one, I take the piece of paper, turn it over, I draw the outline of a can, and I just start filling that can up with their strengths. What do I like about myself? What do other people like about me? So everything we're doing, we want them to visually see it. We want them to hear it in music, and then we want them to physically do something. So we try to use all the learning styles as we're doing this. You know, we've put over 3 million students through these 10 visual metaphors I'm going to highlight real quick. We've never had a student go, I don't understand this picture. Being someone with severe learning disabilities, I really didn't like complexity. I like things to be really clear, really simple. And I think that's kind of been our niche, why we've had success for we've been doing this for 28 years, is because students really understand what we're doing. This next one here is about how to control your defense mechanisms. You know, when I was in school, the teacher would say, Christian, turn to page 130 and read out loud. I didn't really know how to read, so I punched the kid next to me or swear at the teacher, because I'd rather be sent to the principal's office for acting out behaviorally than 30 kids laughing at me because I don't know how to read. Let me tell you, this is how bad I hated being in a classroom. If I got sent to the principal's office, Maryland had corporal punishment. They would literally beat me with a wood paddle. So I'd rather be beat with a wood paddle than sit in a classroom and have kids laugh at me because I don't know how to read. Hopefully, I think Maryland has stopped their corporal punishment, thank goodness. But back in the 70s, they loved them paddles. And this next metaphor I'm going to have Jason share with you. This is one of my favorite ones, called the motivation formula. You want to share a little bit about that, Jason?
Yeah, happy to. So all of these images that you're seeing, these come from part of this thing we call the Why Try approach. And the central goal, the most simplified goal of this Why Try approach is to help students learn the skills of resilience. And so we've broken resilience down into like 10 key skills. We know there are more than that, but we highlight 10 that we teach. And then we have a very specific way that we teach them. We use these visual metaphors, we make it engaging. And the engagement piece is really where the overlap starts to become into other areas beyond just the academics. How do we get them to show up? How do we get them to engage? How do we get them to find some internal motivation? And a lot of that comes from the engagement piece. But this image really represents one of the key starting points that's kind of like ground zero for resilience. So as we teach the skills of resilience, one of the key skills is to help students learn to have a resilient mindset, which involves how they view their challenges and then how they can apply some strategies to not give up when they're experiencing challenges. I know as a young school psych, when I first started, one of the things that I really had to reconcile with early on was this a little bit of a feeling of helplessness. Like I would sit down with students and I would hear some really challenging things. You know, we'd hear about trauma that students had experienced, abuse they may have experienced, generational poverty they were living in, gang culture, drug culture. And I would go home and I would think, if I just had a magic wand, I'd make their problems go away, disappear, and then that would make life better for him. But I never found the magic wand. And it was while I was in this process of kind of like deconstructing and reconstructing what I thought I knew about resilience that helped me have like a really nice aha moment. And I think this picture illustrates it nicely. The aha moment that I had was digging into some specific research on resilience, realizing that resilience is not the elimination of challenges, but rather it's changing our relationship to our challenges. And we know there's certain challenges we may not be able to remove from a student's life. I can't take this thing that happened to you away from you. Well, peak resilience is helping a person be able to thrive even amidst the challenges that we may not be able to take away. So in this image, you have this path that the water is following. And water is such an interesting metaphor for this because water can be really good and necessary. We have to have it to survive. But water can also be very destructive and damaging. And so the comparison here is that water represents challenges, and challenges kind of follow that same path. Challenges help us grow. They help us become who we are. They inform our worldview and our ability to empathize. But challenges can also be really devastating and overwhelming. And so when a human is faced with challenges, there's this crossroads moment of, am I going to, and you can see at the beginning, or is it possible to channel those challenges towards productive outcomes? Can I learn how to not give up and actually channel those challenges towards productive outcomes? And if you follow the path through that water, it goes through a series of dams that have steps that kind of purify that water, that have steps that help us to not give up and remain engaged. And then that last dam, if you look closely, is connected to some power lines. And so for people that are applying resilience, peak level resilience allows a person to almost take their challenges and make it their greatest strength. Like the things they've been through, the things that they're surviving can really become their greatest source of productivity and ability to contribute to the world if they can learn how to stay motivated in the midst of that and not give up. And so I love this particular learning unit because it kind of brings everything together, and I really view it as ground zero for resilience. Sorry, that was maybe longer than you wanted, Christian, but I get fired up about it.
Yeah, perfect. All right, the next slide. So our computers today are a little bit slow. I'm not sure what's going on, but I don't know, probably a connection.
If yours not shown, it should be the crabs in the pot.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, this is a tribute to my home state of Maryland. I'm sure some of you have experienced the Old Bay seasoning on some Maryland crabs, nothing better in the world. If you take a bunch of live crabs and you put a lid on the pot, if you don't put a lid on the pot, why can't the crabs get out of the pot? The students will say the other crabs are reaching up and pulling them down. So I'll say, hey, your friends you're skipping school with, you're fighting with, doing drugs with, whatever the situation is, all they're doing is they're pulling you down, they're keeping you in the pot. We know positive peer support is the greatest thing in the world. Negative peer support, every parent knows, is a nightmare. And so I always tell the kids, if you blink twice, instead of the crabs pushing each other, down into the pot, they can also be pushing each other out of the pot. So again, every question you ask the student is written around the metaphor. What are the reasons for staying in the pot? If I'm in a gang, that gang gives me money, it gives me protection, it gives me prestige, it acts as a surrogate family. So, again, every question, you'll see this one with jumping hurdles, all the questions are right there. These are just, 6 steps to getting over your hurdle there. It's fine, you can go back to the hurdle there. The 6 steps to jumping your hurdle. There we go. You have to identify the problem, you got to create options, get help, take action. But my favorite one is believe in change. You see number 5 there. On a scale from 1 to 10, circle where you are and believing that change will happen. 1, I can't change. 10, I know I have the strength to change. If the student says anything below a 5, I'll spend the next couple of weeks helping them believe that change is possible. They have to believe that if they grind, they put one foot in front of another, there's a payoff. That's just built into the human condition is, we do things that we feel like have some benefit, that make a difference. Otherwise, it's hard to put that effort in over and over again. So we just have them write in the hurdle, whatever the problem is, and we just walk them through that basic social work problem solving model there. And then the next metaphor here is a kind of an interesting metaphor. When I was in school, I spent most of my time drawing mazes. And so I'm going to have Jason pull that up. Yeah, we're having some connectivity issues for some reason today a little bit. Hey, Jason, you want to explain this one to him? Explain the maze to him.
Yeah, so the maze is, and all of these are part of a series of images. So this maze is part of our hard work and determination learning unit. We have some additional images as part of this. We have things like an image of students crossing a finish line, an image of students climbing a mountain, and an image of students completing a puzzle. And they all represent these things that we have to see through to completion. And so it's a great place to discuss the value of hard work and determination. We have kind of an epidemic of apathy right now in young people where students just don't want to engage. I think in a lot of cases it may be a defense mechanism towards a lot of heartbreak that they've experienced. But we have students that don't want to engage or see things through to completion. And so we have some great imagery that you can use both as activities, but also to lead and facilitate discussions around the importance of putting effort into something and seeing it through to completion.
All right. The next one here, they got to lift society's laws and rules. When you talk to kids about rules, man, they can push back really hard on that. And so I think I got so tired of having so many conversations about the benefits of laws and rules. I thought there's got to be a different way to communicate that. So I would just say to the student, hey, do you notice anything strange about this weightlifter? They'd say, well, he's buff on one side and he's kind of weak on the other side. Jason was the model for the left side. I was the model for the right-hand side of the metaphor there. And so I'll say, look, have you ever lifted weights before? When you're pushing up on the weight, what's the weight doing? And the kids will say, well, the weight is going up. I'll say, yeah, well, the weight's going up. It's also coming back down. And as you push against it, it tears the cells. It tears the fibers in the muscles. For example, I do 3,000 sit-ups every morning, and my stomach muscles keep getting bigger and bigger, stronger and stronger. I don't recommend anybody does 3,000 sit-ups. It's a lot. But anyways, that's my built-in joke, Jason. Nobody laughed. But but I'll say, look, your weight, your resistance, that balloon are the things you're doing to get yourself in trouble. You've got to lift that left-hand side, that heavier weight that represents your laws and rules. This next one here is they've got to get plugged into a support system. When I first work with students, they have one or less of these, parent or caregiver, positive friend, teacher, counselor, school official, but I want them to get at least 3 of these. One of the good things that came out of COVID is the debate about relationships are over. For years as a social worker speaking across America, we talk about the most important thing is a relationship, and people would say, well, that's great coming from a bleeding heart social worker. And then we did a worldwide study during COVID, and we saw what happened when the world basically went into isolation. So the only good thing I know that came from COVID is the debate about relationships are completely over. It is the number one X factor, hands down. And I don't know if Jason, you want to say anything more about getting plugged in, and then I'm going to have Jason share this last one on getting over the wall here, seeing over the wall. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump right into the wall. I think this image is, again, it's one of the images that we use. We use visual metaphors to help lead discussions. It's a really powerful teaching tool. And so we use visual metaphors to help lead discussions towards these key concepts of resilience. And so this image of the wall helps us teach the concept of self-efficacy, which is the confidence or the belief that you can influence your outcomes. But this image of the wall is also really representative of the importance of engagement, which I know is a key piece we want to discuss today. And so I'll just walk you through very, very at an overview level of how this kind of represents the journey we're trying to take our students on. This kiddo on the ground level, he has a wall in front of him that's limiting his field of vision. It's limiting his belief in himself and what he sees for himself in the future. And the wall represents all the different types of challenges that a student may have. And so our goal with every student is to try to help move those students away from that wall and help change their view towards not only their challenges, but their experience in class and the whole education process. And right now, this disengagement epidemic that we have, I think is clouded and exacerbated by all of these challenges. We have students that are dealing with so many challenges at home, with their friend groups, societal challenges. They've got cell phones and data in their hands 24/7. And it makes it really, really tough to engage with the content that we're trying to deliver in our buildings. And when that disengagement starts to happen, it leads towards all these challenges we know are taking place: chronic absenteeism, lack of motivation, and an overall hopelessness. And back to the concept of resilience. In fact, hope and resilience are so connected that I always tell people, one of the quickest ways to gauge like resilience in an individual is to see if you can kind of eye test their hopelessness. And if you can tell hopelessness is creeping in to a person, it's pushing the resilience out. Hopelessness and resilience can't really coexist. So when it comes to engagement, all of these things have to kind of work in synchronicity with one another. So the first step we always teach towards engagement and towards trying to shift this view, this perspective of our students, is to start with the relationship. It's the key to motivation. It's the beginning of everything. When students feel different around us, they respond different to us. And we've all witnessed this. One way I always frame this to adult educators, and I'll ask you all, you can respond affirmatively. There's a way you can raise your virtual hand. So I'll ask you this question. How many of you have had the following experience? How many of you have had the experience of having a student that would work for you when they wouldn't work for other grownups in the building? So I'm seeing most of the hands go up. If you've had that experience, then you can testify that the relationship is the key to the motivation. If a student's motivated to work for you when they're not motivated to work for other people, chances are there's a difference in relationship. They feel different when they're around you. And so that's always the starting point. That's the heartbeat of this approach, the beginning of this process of helping change our students' perspective towards challenges. Then we deliver our concepts through relevance. We have to help them see how the content that we're delivering applies to their lives. And then we build out this framework, this staircase of skills of resilience. Things like tearing off our labels and seeing positive self-image, recognizing that decisions have consequences, practicing emotional regulation, responding differently when I become frustrated, recognizing the influence of others and valuing positive peer influence in relationships, applying good problem-solving skills, understanding the value of hard work and determination, responsibility and expectations, following the rules, building positive support systems. We connect that all together with the commitment to not give up when things become difficult. And as we start to apply those and build that resilient mindset, then something shifts. And that kiddo on top of the wall still very well may have challenges in his life. We talked about resilience is not the elimination of challenges, but when we can start to apply the skills of resilience combined with real connection with the caring adults in our lives, then our worldview starts to shift and our perspective towards our challenges start to shift. And so that kiddo on top of the wall that's applied these things still has challenges in his life, relatively speaking, but he has a very different field of vision. And he can see in his outlook now opportunity, freedom, and self-respect, which are three things we believe every student should be able to gain from the education process if we can provide connection, engagement, and help them see the value of this. So that's like the big picture overview of applying these skills of resilience, trying to teach those through a visual metaphor and engagement and activity-based model. And then we have some really nice supplemental pieces to assist with that shift in perspective and building that resilient mindset. Did I cover that good enough for you, Christian?
Perfect, perfect.
And the nice thing is this, within this model, every student can see themselves within it. The beautiful thing about resilience is universally applicable. Every student needs it. I had a really unique opportunity as a school psych. I worked in some very different demographic settings. I worked in a very wealthy school, and then I worked in demographically one of the poorest schools, as it would be classified within our district. And the interesting thing is I never met a student or an adult for that matter from any demographic background that didn't need resilience, regardless of what your set of problems you face or how unfair a hand you may have been dealt or how generous of a hand you may have been dealt. Resilience still applies and it still impacts a person's ability to thrive throughout those. Now, in conjunction with that, Christian, you want to cover this or you want me to address it?
Yeah, go ahead hit the 3 R's. I might just add a little something there to.
Okay. So the foundation of this approach, and this is like maybe the simplest formula towards engagement that we teach. And I'm not going to use any phrases that are new to you, but this is a very simple and effective approach towards resilience. And we really emphasize this when we teach people on our model. It's a thing we call the new 3 R's. And the new 3 R's, I really believe, will improve any content that you have to deliver. So as educators, when we were introducing ourselves at the beginning, we have about every role within a building represented in here. We have classroom teachers, counselors, social workers, administrators. We have community support. We have mental health professionals here. Regardless of your title, there is one common role that we all have. And the common role is we deliver content. Some of us deliver curriculum, some of us deliver intervention, some of us deliver both, but we deliver content, and our goal is we want the people we deliver our content to consume our content. So this formula, the new 3 R's, consider this like a simple master formula for both connection and engagement, but also to make our content more consumable and more effective. And so here it is, the new 3 R's. The first R is the R of a relationship. We are a relationship-based organization. Our approach is a relationship-based approach. The relationship is the secret to engagement, motivation. It's also the secret to resilience. And we'll talk more about resilience here in a minute. But the relationship is almost inseparable from resilience. It has such an important connection to it. In fact, you can dig through, there's about 50 years of good research on resilience. Well, I'll talk in a minute. The relationship is the key ingredient. So the relationship lies at the heart. We can't lose track of it. And I know we're all overwhelmed. We all have more stuff to do than we have time to do it. But we have to keep the relationship at the center of our whole approach. And it has to be intentional and it has to be personalized. Each student has to feel value and worth when they're in our presence. And we'll talk about some specific language and strategies we have for that. Lots of research on that. I don't need to belabor it, but the bottom line is the positive relationship with a caring adult teacher or counselor and a student consistently shows up in research as having a causal relationship with resilience. The second R in the formula is the R of relevance. And relevance involves how we deliver our content. Are we able to deliver content in a way that our students can see how it applies to their life? And this is one of the biggest disconnect areas we see. We see this all the time. We have students disengage and their response will be, when am I going to use this? I don't even want to go to college. When am I going to use this? There's memes, that make jokes about, I'm an adult and I still haven't used the quadratic formula, not to take a pot shot at the math teachers, but these are These are things that are being said, and so we have to reconcile this, because I believe there's value behind all of it. All of this stuff has value. Students are going to be interested in consuming that content, and the same applies to resilience content, behavior content, social or emotional content. It has to be delivered with relevance. They have to see the value and the connection. Part of relevance involves how we engage, how we deliver the content. It's not just how we frame our message, but it's the tools we use to deliver. Are we using things that are generationally and culturally relevant to our students? Are we engaging with music, activities, stories, and metaphors, media, technology, all of these things that influence how a student engages? And from a very early age, we know young people are engaging with the world different than they ever have. Go out in public. What do we do? What does society do with a fussy child in public? It hands it a device, it hands it a screen. And whether we agree with the benefit of that or not, this is how our students are being raised to connect with and make sense of the world. And so we're at this crossroads moment in education where we have to figure out how to take all the technology and try to connect it, use it if possible as part of our delivery model, but also make our material engaging enough beyond that through activities, through good processing, through person-to-person processing, that we can pull that connection and relevance out. So we combine those two things and it gives us our third R, which is the R of resilience, which is what we've been talking about. And we've broken down resilience for you with some of the key ingredients. There's one thing I want to get to on resilience. And resilience essentially is this examination of why two people will respond so differently to a challenge. One of the key pieces I want to highlight for you within the definition of resilience is that ability to thrive. Peak level resilience goes beyond just endurance or survival. Those are key ingredients. We have to have those to be resilient. But if we're trying to maximize resilience in our students, what we're really working towards is maintaining the ability to thrive and be productive even in the presence of challenges. So resilience ultimately becomes not the elimination of challenges, but changing our relationship to our challenges. And that's where engagement becomes such a key piece. When the engagement is there, the resilience naturally builds on it because it is changing our relationship to those things that previously may have been obstacles, setbacks, etc. Anything you want to add, Christian?
No, I think you've hit it good. Just a little bit to relationships. I just want to emphasize the concept of surrendering the one-up relationship, and that concept is just basically letting kids. Jason alluded to it. They know they have value and worth, whether they succeed or whether they fail. When I was in a classroom, give you an example. When I was in a classroom doing some teaching, I used to polka dot my door frame, candy stripe it, get all these funky, art on the door frame. And I would tell kids, when you walk into my classroom, I'm only going to focus on what's right with you. You can go talk to the vice principal about what's wrong with you. You can go talk to the counselor. Look, I'm only going to go focus on what's right with you. Now, if you do this intervention, the kid will always get worse because they have to test you. They're going to be like, there's no way you can focus on what's just right with me. But if you can continue to do that, you got them. They'll be motivated. They'll literally run through a wall for you. And I wanted to know, why does a kid thrive in one classroom and act out in another classroom? And it really comes down to this ability to surrender the one-up relationship. And we have over 100 tools on how to surrender the one-up relationship. Another simple one I use is I let kids sit in my nice leather chair. I would sit on a metal folding chair, and just to symbolically surrender the one-up. And all of us, if I said to you, who are the people you most like being around, who do you feel safest with? They know your strengths and they know your weaknesses, but they treat you the same. So that surrendering the one up is so important there. And Jason, do you want to add a little bit more to surrendering the one up? I know that's something you're passionate about.
Yeah, I can talk for a really long time about this. So I'll try to exercise some brevity, but this is a really significant thing. This, in my opinion, is the heartbeat of both the Y-Try approach and the heartbeat to engagement. And the idea behind this is very specific language, surrendering the one-up relationship. The idea behind this is that a lot of students come into our buildings already feeling one down or less significant or insignificant within the ecosystem that ultimately makes up the school from a social standpoint, academic standpoint, etc. And there's a lot of things that exist that are bigger and older than us that can contribute to that kind of one up and one down. Even things like titles or height differentials or being an expert in a topic versus not can contribute to that. And I'm not a proponent for eliminating all of those things. We have to have those to provide structure. But if we don't have an awareness of the impact they can have on students, then students come in and enter our space already feeling less than and not necessarily feeling connected. So when we are surrendering the one-up relationship, what we're doing is the simplest way to define that is we are trying to very intentionally do some act that can help communicate to each student on a personal level that they have value and worth. And when that happens, they begin to feel different around us. And then we can start to change and adjust our expectations and their level of accountability. And if you think about it, getting a student to work for you when they won't work for other grownups is exactly what that is. You know, when Christian talks about letting him sit in his chair, I used to do the same thing. I had this fancy chair. I was the first person in my family to graduate college. And so I was suffering from imposter syndrome. I thought I had sneaked into this world of academia. So I bought this big dumb leather chair to prove what a professional I was. And my wife was so mad, but it ended up being my greatest tool because I would let kids sit in it and they immediately felt more important in my presence, even if we were going through a discipline. And when I started doing that, it changed. Students started trying harder on assessment tests for me. My one-on-one counseling sessions started to change just through that act. So for this idea of surrendering the one up, we actually have, and we're going to include some information I mentioned. We're going to put up a QR code. We want to give you our resilience bundle that has some great resources in it. We actually have a model now, a leadership training model that we call our Transformational Leader Toolkit, where we provide resources for leaders within school systems or within community systems to be able to go out and teach and provide leadership workshops to their faculty and staff to assist and accelerate this connection piece and to intentionally apply these principles of surrendering the one up. And so we have workshops available that are part of this leadership toolkit. They're designed to help accentuate the good. Every educator has really, really good intentions. They do. You can't get into this field without having a good heart and without having good intentions behind it. This is designed to help build on top of that and build educator capacity by providing some really useful strategies. And we use the same teaching model of visual metaphors. We have a really fun visual metaphor to help teach this. It's built around the idea of a selfie mode versus portrait mode on your phone. And as educators, we have to be able to pivot between those. Sometimes we do have to be in selfie mode and recognize I've got to apply some self-care. I've got to do some self-assessment. I've got to build my own capacity. But other times we have to make sure that we're flipped and we're in portrait mode and that our lens and our focus is completely on our students and that we're actively helping our students feel value and we're actively building trust with our students and helping them feel accepted within our classrooms and in our offices. And so it becomes a really difficult balance that every educator has to reconcile with. So we have some great workshops as part of this Transformational Leader Toolkit to assist with that for leaders in communities and schools and buildings and districts to be able to go out and lead out on some of these discussions where we've got some great pre-built workshops that are designed to be really easy to go out and lead these discussions. They explore things like understanding that definition of what surrendering the one up really means. How do I do this and maintain boundaries and accountability and expectation? We provide additional strategies. We dig into trauma-informed models. What are some best practices to make sure that we're trauma-informed? There's so much research now. We have so many students, and by the way, staff coming into our buildings that would rank high on an ACEs evaluation, which evaluates adverse childhood experiences, which carry all the way into adulthood that can impact us. When we bring trauma into our buildings, it impacts our ability to engage with the things around us. So how do we provide safe, supportive environments there? How do we improve our relationships through building our own self-awareness? Can I recognize that I might have blind spots? And can I recognize that and try and be able to engage with people that may view things different than me? Make sure we're celebrating success. Can I learn the practice of resilient listening, which is kind of a deep empathic listening to really try to understand where a person comes from? And by the way, empathy doesn't always mean agreeing with the person. It just means recognizing and valuing that their perspective and background is important as well as we work towards connection and engagement and building towards motivation. I went through really quickly. We have a couple of you have asked. We're going to put up a QR code here shortly that'll get you information on these workshops. That'll also get you information on our skills of resilience. We're going to include some of our visuals, and we'll even give you some sample lesson plans so that you'll have something that you can use right away yourself or put in the hands of one of your counselors and have them start trying to apply this model that combines connection and engagement. Christian, what would you add to it?
Yeah. Again, Jason's going to put up that QR code, but it's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking I kind of want to leave you guys. We have about 4 more minutes. Just a quick thought. All of us have a gamut of emotions. We all have anywhere from 40 to 60,000 different emotions today. We're all going to have that. And one of the things that really helps us be resilient is to maximize both our positive and negative emotions. People who are resilient, we looked at thousands of people that were resilient. All of them, put one foot in front of another when they felt depression, anxiety, fear, loneliness. And again, there's no law in the universe that says you cannot take a negative emotion and create a productive outcome. I'm a huge fan of positive psychology. I think positive psychology is half the equation. But I think what makes us human is the fact that we have negative emotions. We feel sad, we feel lonely, we feel depressed. That's just being human. And, what makes us not a robot, what makes us not a machine, that makes us not AI, what's most special about ourselves is that we mess up, we make mistakes, we have negative emotions. And so to be resilient, it's really important. It's like a car battery. You maximize both, battery only works because of the positive and the negative coming together. And I just wanted to plant that seed of resilience that just kind of give you a powerful resilience tool is to be able to use both your positive and negative emotions. The greatest music, the greatest plays, the greatest art is really born out of negative emotions. Picasso took the War of Spain and seeing his countrymen die in the War of Spain and created incredible artwork. Mandela took 27 years of being in a prison camp. Malala took, being shot by the Taliban and said, hey, I'm going to make a difference in this world. And millions of young women are receiving an education. She gets the Nobel Peace Prize. So when I started studying highly resilient people, they had the ability to maximize their negative emotions. So that's just a thought. You guys have been an incredible group. We see the interest out there. I know, Jason, several people have asked how to be able to, get more information. The other thing I'm willing to do, if you set up a demo with Why Try, we'll give you a free copy of the book. We'll give you a digital copy of the Resilience Breakthrough. If you set up a demo, I want to offer that. The other thing is I want to offer, if you're willing to, I went through resilience. I was just sharing with you a little bit about the battery concept there. And I would love to share. I can do a 1-hour presentation on resilience. I'm willing to do a free event on resilience. And this is something I do. I'm doing a keynote. I'm giving a speech tomorrow in Salt Lake City. And usually people pay $5,000, $6,000 for that presentation on resilience. And I'd be willing to do one for you guys, an online one, if you want to get a team of people together. I'm sure some of you are thinking, some other people hearing this, I wish this person would have heard this. If you want to do that, if you just go to this QR code, and you can request that. And I'll turn it over to you, Jason, maybe let them know how to access all this.
Yeah, that's great. If you'll hit that QR code, that'll be the easiest way. You can also email me directly, jason@whytry.org. I'll be happy to hear from any of you. We went through a lot. We had limited time today, and we went through a lot. really at a high level. But keep in mind, we've got 20 years of content and 20 years of fine tuning our approach. We do really deep dives into our resilience model. We do workshops on digging into the sources of resilience. We do workshops on digging into the skills of resilience. We do workshops on engagement, student engagement, and surrendering the one up, where we're able to do real deep dives, we can do like activity-based approaches, build more of the visuals. But we knew with our audience taste of the model and the approach and a lot of the resources, and then hopefully be able to continue to do some more work in collaboration with you. That's a super generous offer that Christian made, and we've had some just incredible virtual events where people have taken him up on that offer, and he'll come in and virtually speak to any group that you can get together. And it's a really fun process. Christian brings a unique approach to resilience and to problem solving and to motivation. And so I hope a few of you will take him up on that offer. We're just about out of time. Do any of you have any questions on our approach or on the skills of resilience or on engagement or the transformational leader toolkit that we have in general? That is a toolkit that leaders can buy, and then you can use that within your whole school. You can deliver those at faculty meetings. We've had some of the best implementations of that we've had. We've had entire districts that have trained their entire staff on that model of surrendering the one up, because that's one of the very universal pieces where even a cafeteria worker or a bus driver still needs to have the skills of connection the same way that a teacher does or the same way that a social worker does. And so that can be a really unifying approach to trying to unify a message around connection within your building or your community or your district or network.
Hey, thank you, Regina. You get some nice compliment there, Jason, from Regina.
Yeah, really nice. Thank you, Regina. Anything you want to add, Christian?
Man, I think you summed it up. But yeah, just access that QR code. And, I always tell people we work for you. You tell us, it's funny in school districts, you all know what needs to happen to get these tools to kids. We need Y-Try warriors out there to help open up some doors for us, and we'll support you. You just tell us what you need. We'll support you. We're pretty easy to work with. We're pretty down to earth. That's one thing I'm proud of. We've been doing this for 27 years, and people always say, hey, we're really easy to work with. And so we're child advocates. So we'll work with you. We'll make it happen. We just need you to communicate with us, and I promise you, we're very easy to work with, and we can get some tools. And I'll be really frank with you guys. When we can show people what we're doing, we get very little rejection. I think a lot of times in education, people think there's nothing new or innovative out there, and I think when we can show people what we're doing, we get a really, really good response. So we just need your help. I need warriors out there. I need people to help us get the message. We're not in your community, but we can come online. We can come to you in person. I mean, when we're talking about interesting, when Jason was talking about surrendering the one-up relationship and some things, almost every child in Ireland is going through Y-Try right now. And sometimes it breaks my heart. Sometimes we're doing more work in Ireland and Europe and other places than we're doing in certain places in certain communities in America. So, it's interesting especially when it comes to resilience. Millions of kids are getting access to evidence-based resilience, and many kids aren't. I really look at that as a social justice issue in the next 20 years. I think millions of kids are going to get access to resilience, and too many aren't. If my kids have access to resilience, every child in this country should have access to resilience. And I really believe resilience, people always ask me, are you born with resilience, or is resilience a learned skill? And, I really believe that resilience can be learned. I know for sure I've seen I've seen thousands of children and parents and families learn resilience. And Jason, maybe Jason, talk about the resilience parent guide a little bit, and then maybe mention how the project you just finished, where the students can kind of fill it out as they go, those new lesson plans. Maybe share both of those real fast.
Yeah, so we have a parent guide to resilience, which we will include in their bundle. If you'll hit that QR code, it is a great free resource for your parents that will help teach the same model of sources of resilience that you can teach to your students. And it's built speaking directly to parents, activity based, designed for them to help apply some of these. We've had great experiences integrating that into parent nights that have been done in communities. It's a great resource for any of you that engages with parents. We also have just recently finished development on, they were originally called student worksheets, but based on some really good feedback we've gotten, I think we're going to adjust the name to student game plans. And they are really nice, quick hitter, kind of self-guided walkthroughs through our visual metaphors designed for your students to be able to go through and engage with some of these visual metaphors in kind of a unique way. And they maximize use of limited time settings. And then they have really nice facilitator processing guides that will guide you as the grown-up to processing and asking questions through those resources. The other thing I wanted to point out, we have Tim's comment made me smile because he's always such a breath of fresh air. And the thing that Tim always centers us around, and I think it's such a nice bookend to this discussion, is Tim is he's a legend in Cincinnati. He's done some incredible community work, but he's always such a refreshing reminder that it is about each individual student and how we connect with each individual student. And we have all these models and all these ideas to assist with it. But at the end of the day, it is how we connect and how we see each individual student. And when we have great people doing the work and we can go put great resources in their hands, great things can happen. So I just want to thank all of you for being here and doing the work, for showing up. Excited for you to get your hands on this resilience bundle. And I really hope we get the opportunity to collaborate some more. We'll keep doing webinars, keep showing up to these, help spread the word, invite others.